Moin, was neue Reaction auf Max Ward, aka der Krötenficker. The most hated man in Parkour history. Also jetzt bin ich aber wirklich gespannt.
How do you become the most hated person in entire sport? From stealing the website domain names of famous athletes, to trademarking the word parkour, and even starting a website where he challenged people to help him find a supermodel girlfriend for a $100,000 cash prize. This guy has done it all. Over the past decade, I've watched parkour grow.
Eine Webseite aufmachen, um ihm dabei zu helfen, eine Topmodel-Freundin zu finden. Wie geil ist das denn? Und dann noch 100.000 Euro Cash für denjenigen, der hier der ihm so eine richtige Supermodel dann serviert oder was? Das ist ja Weltklasse, die Idee.
From weird guys jumping around in sweatpants to a thriving international sport. But there's one name that has been brought up time and time again as this mysterious...
Auch geil, Max schön im Lidl Weihnachtspulli. Also Max hat gelernt, ist klar.
Evil figure that has screwed over countless people in our sport. But I'd never had any dealings with him myself until one day I got an email. Adam Dunlap here, video idea. Do a video on the history of me and why people in the parkour world don't like me. Well, when you put it like that, it'd be rude not to.
Adam Dunlap came to Max Ward to make a video on him. Like, imagine the conversation. Good opportunity.
So I lined up calls with some big names that he'd had run-ins with in the past, like Tim Sheaf, Stora, and of course Adam himself, to hear the full story on how he became the most hated man in parkour history.
The reason why...
Ich hoffe sehr, dass dieses Viech Max auch ein paar Kröten irgendwie dann fertig macht. Wenn er jetzt jemandem 100.000 Euro dafür bietet, ihm eine Freundin, also so eine richtig geile Perle zu finden, dass wenn er sagt, mach mal ein Video über mich, ihm auch mal mindestens so dann eine Null davon wegstreicht oder was und das bezahlt, so, weißt du, 10.000 noch, das wäre, das hoffe ich aber schwer.
I was in two minds of getting involved with this video is because he came to you to make it.
Yeah, exactly. It's just that says so much, doesn't it?
When I get this message from you, literally the same day, Toby showed us this email from Adam Dunlap.
Now, back in the day, Toby Seagar was actually sponsored by Take Flight, Adam's clothing brand. But ever since he left, Adam has been relentlessly trying to get Stora involved with the brand.
Toby's impression of him is he's an absolute nut job. More so than...
So in this recent message, Adam, who has been rejected time and time again by the Stora boys, hits them with this crazy business plan.
Like talking about joining forces with Stora. In a few years' time, we'll have like an exit strategy and we'll all leave parkour as millionaires.
But that's only one recent incident. So to get the full story straight from the horse's mouth, I got Adam on a call.
I think the only thing I ever did wrong was the first thing I did wrong. I said, how do I get the biggest athletes in the world to work with me? I know what I'll do. I'll buy .coms that are their name, and then one day they'll realize that the .com is king. They'll call me up. They'll say, hey, can I have timsheaf.com? And I'll say, sure, Tim, I bought it for you. And I'll give you the domain, and then we'll start a relationship.
Now this already sounds pretty sus.
Businessman. Die Frage ist, ob so ein Businessman wie sowas in der Parkour-Community was zu suchen hat, weil Parkour ist wirklich alles außer das, was er jetzt zumindest so als seinen ersten Eindruck vermittelt. Also denkst du jetzt einfach irgendein Wichser, der viel Kohle hat, viel Kohle machen will und das Ganze halt so ein bisschen auf räudige Art in der Parkour-Community. Bin gespannt. Man kann ja jetzt nur urteilen. Wer weiß, wie das alles wirklich so ist.
Suspect. So I tried to get in contact with Tim myself by starting a website called timsheafsucks.com. No, obviously I'm joking. I just dropped him a DM on Instagram and he responded almost straight away. So I got him on a call and I told him why Adam said he'd bought the website. This was his response.
I don't know if that's true, because at any point he could have said, do you know what, just have it. But I think the way we approached it, we weren't open to it anyway. I mean, I would have took the website if he would have given it to me, but yeah.
So Tim was pretty pissed off at the time because Adam didn't just buy the domains and hold on to them like he said he was going to initially.
So I was working with this guy and he proposed making websites on the domains. And then you'll have Take Flight ads that people can click.
Okay. I can see where people had an issue with that.
I know, yeah. It was like, what are you thinking? What are you thinking?
And people did have a pretty huge issue with it. So Mark Turok, the founder and CEO of American Parkour,
Ich wollte gerade sagen, warte mal, den kenne ich doch. Kurzen Moment.
finds the web pretty huge issue with it. So Mark Turok, the
Wisst ihr, wo ich den erkenne? Vom World Chase Tag. der, als wir beim World Chase Tag, also die Weltmeisterschaft im Fang quasi, teilgenommen haben, war er auch die ganze Zeit da und fand das einfach geil, auch was wir gemacht haben. Sieht man ja auch. Ich meine, guckt euch an, der sieht auch schon ein bisschen wild aus und der fand das natürlich geil. Geile Sau.
The founder and CEO of American Parkour finds the website and the shitstorm begins.
Mark finds the website and has a lawyer write up a 2-page letter that basically says, we're going to sue you. That's when I think the drama just started. Like, I'll take responsibility and say I screwed up on this one, but I didn't hurt anybody.
At this point, Adam has fought his way high up in the ranks as one of the most disliked figures in parkour, but he still has some big moves to make before he gets the undisputed title of the most hated man in parkour history.
The next thing was the way I chose to market the company. But somewhere around 2010, I changed the marketing of Take Flight to be the official clothing of parkour. Now, the reason I did that was because I flew to France and met with David. And we basically signed a verbal endorsement.
David Bell, für alle, die es hier nicht wissen, steht hier unten auch Founder of Parkour, also quasi der Gründer von Parkour. Ja? Er hat Parkour ins Leben gerufen, bekannt gemacht, die ersten krassen Sachen gemacht. Also David Bell ist so eine Art Gott.
Contract that he was going to endorse the company.
A verbal endorsement contract, which basically means he flew to France and said to a guy who doesn't speak the same language as him, we use your parkour and we make clothes and it's official. And then David was like, bah, oui, let's go. And he used that as a justification for using the tagline, the official clothing of parkour.
There wasn't money changing hands. There wasn't an official contract, but we had his support. And I think at that time, we're still the only clothing company in the parkour world.
This simply isn't true. There were a few other players in the parkour clothing game back in 2010, and they had major competition from Urban Free Flow, run by the controversial figure Easy Styler, who Jimmy the Giant actually made a video on back in the day.
Alter.
Run by the controversial figure Easy.
Das Video habe ich auch gesehen von Jimmy the Giant. Und was wild ist, wir spulen mal kurz vor.
Who Jimmy the Giant actually made a video on.
Max ist quasi aktuell, ja, er lädt leider nicht so regelmäßig und viel was hoch wie Jimmy damals, aber der neue Jimmy the Giant des Parkours. Jimmy hat nämlich genau diese Art Videos, die Max macht, also so Deep Research und sowas aus der Parkour-Community gemacht. One Man Nearly Destroyed Parkour und so weiter und so fort. Und mittlerweile macht Jimmy leider gar nichts mehr, was mit Parkour zu tun hat. Immer noch so Deep Research Videos, aber über alles Mögliche. Wir können ja mal reingucken. Jimmy macht mittlerweile über so Subkulturen und sowas. Also so, ja, irgendwas, was halt so, weißt du, so Punks und so weiter und so fort. Hier seht ihr, America's Most Hated Subculture, The Decline of Britain's, Failed Hitler. The Forgotten Riots That Almost Destroyed London und so weiter. Also, der macht auch so Doku-Art-Content, aber ganz früher hat er halt all das über Extremsport und vor allem Parkour gemacht. Hier, 10 Best Freerunners You've Never Heard of. 11 Weird Things Freerunners Do. Parkour, the Best Parkour Saves Ever. Also genau das quasi, was Max, ja, gucken wir mal hier nochmal eben rein, was Max jetzt gerade so macht. Ja? The Most Hated Man in Parkour History, The 5 Biggest Jumps in Parkour History, Parkour Scam Follow-Up, ja hier, The Biggest Scam in Parkour History und so weiter. Hier vorher hat er immer mal wieder was mit Vlogs probiert, aber das ist jetzt so seine Content-Schiene und das ist genau das, wo Max ultra krass drin ist. Das hat er studiert auch, er hat Film studiert und schon in der Uni und dann auch als Job immer so Dokus und so was gemacht und das ist auch seine Videos merkt man jetzt schon wieder hier, das Video gerade ultra geil. Übelst viel Recherche, Arbeit drin. Er hat mir selber auch gesagt, Alter, das wäre mir ein Fest, wenn du auf das Video reagierst, weil er hat so viel daran gearbeitet. Habe ich auch mitgekriegt, in Brasilien hat er auch sogar an dem Video so ein bisschen gearbeitet. Und ja, da müssen wir ihn alle zusammen hinpushen, dass er das häufiger macht und da hoffentlich bald auch vielleicht von leben kann. Das wäre sein Traum, da ist er gut drin und das sind so die Sachen, die Parkour braucht, um immer größer zu werden. Ihr habt bei Jimmy gerade gesehen, die Videos. 600, 700.000 Aufrufe, 1 Million Aufrufe, 2 Millionen Aufrufe. Also wirklich virale Dinger, ja. Und nicht irgendwie nur der Sport, sondern halt auch so die Kultur dahinter. Und genau sowas lässt den Sport halt wachsen und ja, einfach wichtiger und größer werden. Weiter geht's.
Back in the day.
Urban Free Flow was marketing as the center of worldwide parkour. And so I decided to put that in our advertisements, and he got really pissed. So I didn't mind pissing people off.
So the man who nearly destroyed parkour and the most hated man in parkour history start going at each other's necks. And all the while, Adam cracks on with his devious marketing strategies.
I wanted to get all the parkour domain names. So I just started buying them. So I bought parkourtshirts.com, parkourshirts.com, parkourpants.com, parkoursweatshirts.com, freerunmagazine.com, freerunningmagazine.com, parkournews.com, parkourcommunity.com. So I ended up having something like, I want to say 200 or so parkour related domain names.
So Adam ended up spending around $20,000 on these domain names. And if you go online now, a lot of these will still redirect you to the takeflight.com website.
And then at one point I created what I called the parkour web. So I actually launched websites on all of these. And each one of these websites had links to all the other websites and then a bunch of links to the main page. My idea was to try to get Google to see Takeflight as the hub.
Now let's take a second to remember how all this began. Everyone was afraid of corporations taking over parkour and dominating the industry. And Adam justified his own business venture on the promise that he would be doing what's best for parkour. But I think we can all agree that things are starting to feel more and more corporate here.
I think there was a Facebook page that was all about the nefarious things I'd done. Someone started a website called takeflightsucks.com. The mistake I made, I gave Takeflight a corporate feel instead of giving it a personal feel.
Now here I was expecting Adam to say that he tried to change that corporate feel and go to the heart of the needs of the community, but instead he goes on to completely contradict his earlier statements and reveal his true ambition for Takeflight.
The vision was you establish the most respected parkour brand, and then you expand out of parkour. I want people like Nike to see Takeflight and say, whoa, this is an impressive brand. Maybe we want to buy it. Everyone else in the parkour community, even today, people like Store, they're selling t-shirts. I was trying to sell a brand for millions of dollars.
So if Takeflight became his idea of success, then he would have millions of dollars and he would just hand over the brand to some corporate entity who doesn't care about the parkour community, and all of that giving back to parkour was just a blatant lie.
I think people somehow...
A blatant lie. Max Ausdrucksweise ist auch einfach geil. Wenn man da hier so das Ganze im professionellen Rahmen jetzt mal sieht, wie er sich ausdrücken kann, wie er sich ausdrückt auf Schlappentour oder so weiter, das ist einfach nur geil. Da spricht er nämlich genauso wie wir, wie der größte Hangos und kann kein Englisch mehr. Und hier, das ist schon wirklich, das ist schon so politisch ausgedrückt alles.
sense of this because it didn't have that authenticity, and so then they saw it as a money grab, and I could see where people might draw that conclusion.
Well, yeah, you just said you wanted to sell the business to a corporation for millions of dollars. If that's not a cash grab, I don't know what is. I mean, yeah, I can see it from both perspectives. Like, it makes sense from a business standpoint, but I can understand how people are like, what the f***?
The website thing and the individual names, I can see that from both sides. The domain portfolio, I have a tough time seeing because nobody wanted those names.
But from here, things get even crazier. Adam decides to sell his coaching business and move across the world to a country where he doesn't speak the language to try and work with a guy that he can't even communicate with.
I'm running my parkour gym, Revolution Parkour, and the thought hit me, how am I ever gonna really work with David if I'm in the States and he's in France? And I thought, you know what? I need to go out and work with him directly. So I sold my parkour gym and moved to France in March 2011.
So he spends the first 3 months.
Alter, man muss mal bedenken, das Ganze spielt sich in 2011 ab. Da war Parkour wirklich noch nicht ansatzweise so groß wie heutzutage. Durch Social Media ist Parkour ja erst gewachsen, dass die ganze Welt Parkour kennt. Clips, jeder hat schon mal einen Parkour-Clip gesehen, ja, selbst, keine Ahnung, die Oma von meiner Nachbarin oder sowas, weißt du, die kennen Parkour. Alle haben schon mal irgendwie was davon gesehen oder gehört oder was, aber damals war wirklich so jeder, was machst du? Was ist Parkour? Und er leitet schon so krasse Schritte ein. Ja, da gab's noch nix damals, 2011, da habe ich nicht ansatzweise Parkour gemacht, ne, damals. Also war wirklich ganz, ganz zu Beginn der Zeit. Da war wirklich noch gar kein Business, hat Max ja auch schon gesagt, im Parkour. Und er ist schon wirklich hier die Big Steps am machen und verkauft sein Gym und sowas alles. Weil das übrigens was krass ist, weil damals gab safe noch nicht viele Parkour-Gyms so. Und er hat eins und verkauft das. Ist krass.
In Avignon, learning French before planning to go and meet David. But David is a complicated guy. He doesn't really use a phone or computer, so he has a close friend take care of all that stuff for him.
David's right-hand man was a guy named Guy. All communication went through Guy. So I would talk to my translator. My translator would write Guy. Guy would talk to David. I didn't really know what was going to happen exactly. I just was going to work with him, learn parkour from him, build Takeflight. I didn't know.
So Adam has put his whole life on hold to do this with no real plan. Just an insane Hail Mary in the hopes that he can get close to this man, David Bell, who he seemed completely obsessed with.
2 months after I get there, Guy passes away. He had stomach cancer. Yeah, it was crazy. I didn't even know he was sick.
So he goes to the funeral of this guy, Guy, meets a couple of parkour guys there, but there is no sign of David.
Long story short, 3 months after I got there, I decided it was time to move to Paris and try to do what I came here to do. But I think at this point, David had deleted his Facebook. I don't even know how to contact him, but I'm just trusting I'm gonna go to Paris. Maybe I will meet him, figure it out. I don't even know at this point what's gonna happen.
So with only 3 months of French knowledge, Adam leaves his only friend in the whole country of France and moves to David's hometown on the outskirts of Paris in the hopes that he might, I don't know, run into him at the supermarket.
The first week I'm there, I'm in Nice, and I run into Alex and Jonathan, who I'd met at Guy's funeral. And long story short, they connect me with David. And then from there, David and I just like matched and we just became good friends. And because Guy was gone, I became David's guy.
So the old family friend who always had David's best interests at heart has now been replaced by the young, ambitious American looking to capitalize on the David Bell name in parkour. You can probably see where this is going.
I moved there in July, and by August, I had convinced David that he needed to have a social media presence. Remember my idea of like, I'll buy Tim Sheaf and Mark Turok and danedwards.com? I did it with David. We launched David Bell's website on davidbell.com. We launched his social media. It all pointed to itself and it all pointed to take flight.
So Adam's master plan is finally working. He's in France working with his idol David and using the David Bell name to push his business, which, given Adam's previous track record, started to get a bit of attention.
So as soon as those websites launched, the biggest rumor mill in the parkour world was Adam's impersonating David Bell.
And if you've been following the story up until this point, you can probably see how they came to that conclusion. Adam himself even admitted as much.
I think the empathetic viewpoint would be to say, no one knew I was working with David. I've never been someone to like talk about all my accomplishments, which also speaks to why Take Flight had this corporate vibe to it. I didn't want it to be about me.
This coming from a guy who made a website about himself called MrParkour.com and emailed me to make a video about him. Now, I don't really buy the whole modesty thing, and neither did the athletes he was sponsoring at the time.
We told him like, hey Adam, like, what if us athletes are the
Krass. Danny ist ein Kollege von mir aus Mexiko, habe ich aber irgendwann in Belgien kennengelernt und er lebt mittlerweile in Australien. Krass, Alter. Er ist auch schon lange am Start. Ich wusste das, aber irgendwie war es mir nicht so bewusst.
image of Take Flight? Let us drive this vehicle and you can like just sit on the back and get the operations and everything going and it's profit for everyone. And he was like, yeah, I thought about that, but no, I still want to be the image of the company.
This is a direct contradiction to what Adam is saying. So the hate for Adam is already pretty high, but the best is yet to come.
The negativity was so pernicious in the parkour world that it was affecting our ability to grow. So people wouldn't wear our clothing because they'd go to a jam and people would look at them weird.
Now, I actually have first-hand experience of this because I started parkour with some French guys who all looked up to David, and David was a big ambassador for Take Flight at the time, so that's what we wore. But when I later moved overseas and all this drama kicked off, people at jams would sometimes give me a hard time for wearing the Take Flight merch, to the point where I eventually just stopped wearing it altogether.
At this point, too, in 2014, we have endorsement salaries. Adding David Bell in clothing and product, we had around $30,000 in endorsement compensation for our pros. And I'm not making any money. I'm not making any money.
Now, I don't believe for a second that Adam wasn't making any money, but if he truly was giving out $30,000 in endorsement salaries, that would be the highest of any parkour clothing brand up until this point. However, the athletes themselves had a different experience.
I was living in Mexico and like now looking back, I feel like I was robbed. Yeah, I did get like a lot of like free t-shirts, but at the same time, he wanted like 10 YouTube videos a month, 20 photos, I don't know how many posts, and like all that for $100.
So there's no question.
Alter Lachs. Eine Kooperation, freie Shirts und sowas alles. Und $100 für 20 YouTube-Videos. Und damals waren Vlogs nicht wirklich ein Ding, sondern Edits. Das heißt, du musstest Clips fertig machen, zusammenschneiden und raus damit. Das ist insane. What?
Danny got taken advantage of here. And he really did try to bring in fresh ideas and make Take Flight better. But eventually, after a few years of sponsorship, he decided to leave.
I posted on the group, I was like, I'm sorry guys, like I'm sorry, like we tried. Unfortunately, just don't want to be part of Take Flight anymore. It's just not worth keep supporting a company that doesn't listen to their own athletes, you know?
I also got in contact with Evan Storm, who worked with Take Flight much more recently for around a year.
Nothing too negative. I mean, he really supported me a lot. He gave me, I think, close to $1,000 in a year just for training trips. Like, I'd hit him up. Hey, he gave me, I think, close to $1,000 in a year just for training trips. Like,
ja gut, das ist auch nicht viel. Das ist unter $100 im Monat. Aber gut, so 2, 3 Trips kann man sich davon dann schon leisten. Das ist geil.
I'd hit him up, hey man, I'm driving down to here, I need some gas, and he would just send it over just for me to like wear the shoes. I guess what I'm trying to say is there wasn't really specifically one thing that triggered me leaving. It was just kind of like a buildup of different things over the course of like, I would say 4 months.
So maybe Adam's treating his athletes a little bit better now, but they're still leaving the organization. And from these 2 examples, I cannot see how he was spending even close to 30K on endorsement salaries. Anyway, Adam, who's still in France working with David at this point, comes up with his most controversial idea yet.
So I'm working with David, and I say, you know, what we could probably do is establish a trademark for parkour.
At this point in the interview, I'm just sitting there thinking, no way. But he proceeds to back up his logic with this example of Pilates.
Now here's the thing, Pilates, yogas, these things are brand names that the founders of those modalities established. You can't be a Pilates teacher without taking courses from the Pilates foundation lineage.
I was intrigued by this, so I looked it up and it's completely untrue. Attempts have been made to copyright the term Pilates and some yoga and Pilates poses, but have always failed and they remain in the public domain. At this point, the activity of parkour has been practiced internationally for over a decade, and while David Bell may have been the first person to use the term, adapted from the French word parkour with a C, it had long since taken on a life of its own.
If David had had a business mind, or if he had trusted business minds, he would have made parkour a trademark. It'd be international, and you could only teach parkour if you were certified and went through courses with David.
The suggestion that an entire sporting movement should be legally gatekept by one man is ridiculous. Imagine if there was only one person in the world who could certify a gymnastics coach. So if you wanted to teach gymnastics, you'd have to go and do their course. It's absurd, but it would certainly make that one person very rich, which is clearly what Adam was thinking.
So we filed for a trademark with parkour. And my vision was anybody in the parkour world who wanted to use parkour on t-shirts or clothing could then pay us a small fee, and all the fees that we got from people basically licensing the name would go to defend our trademark. So we filed for the parkour brand in clothing, and this started a bit of a firestorm as well in the parkour world.
So this is beyond ridiculous. Let's charge anyone who wants to use the word parkour on clothing, and then let's take that money so that we can keep charging people. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, at least admit you're doing it to make a profit. And speaking of profit, what exactly was David Bell getting out of all of this?
In terms of David's involvement with Take Flight at this point, does he own part of the business, or how does it work?
I wish he refused to sign a contract. Because he refused to sign, it was simply a handshake agreement. And I paid him a very large amount of money every month just to be able to use his name.
So that's pretty strange, and I have no idea if he was actually paying him anything. But this next thing is even weirder.
So I have virtually no footage with David. There's 2 photos in existence of me with David. I spent years with this man. He was my best friend, and yet I have almost no evidence of it. It's really strange.
Wow.
So Adam spends the next few years running Take Flight from the US, but he either stops paying David, or maybe he never paid him to begin with, and finally David reaches his limit.
So when did the relationship with David end then?
Ich kann gar nicht so viel zu dem Ganzen sagen. Ich finde einfach geisteskrank spannend zu gucken. Irre, Alter, die Story. Vor allem, wie ich komme irgendwie nicht so ganz drauf klar. Also ich hoffe, da ist irgendwie noch so ein Happy End oder so, warum er das Video jetzt machen will. Weil Max erfährt ja die ganze Story auch nur durch ihn da jetzt in dem Interview, was er persönlich mit ihm führt. Der Typ will ja nicht, dass man ein Video über ihn macht und Max in einer Tour, also derjenige, der das Video macht, also Max, die Kröte, jetzt sagt, was er für ein Weirdo ist und was er für komische Ideen hat. Das wird überhaupt keinen Sinn machen.
I want to say it was 2014. Take Flight wasn't making any money. And he basically said, pay me or I'm going to stop working with you. And I said, David, I love you. You're my brother. I don't have any money to pay you. And he said, fine, we're done. There's some more details to it. You know, they're very personal details. And stop working with you. And I said, David, I love you. You're my brother. I don't have any money to pay you. And he said, fine, we're done. There's some more details to it. You know, they're very personal details. I've never told the story publicly, and I'd rather not today. But it was heartbreaking.
Now, Adam didn't want to give me the full story here, but Danny filled me in on some of the more shocking details of how it went down.
David asked for an advance for like 40K, 50K, some wild price. And Adam was like, oh man, if I'm going to pay you that, I at least expect you to like do some ads and like do some photos and do some promotion. And David was like, yeah, sure. And like got the money and he never posted anything. He was like, oh, thanks for the advance and good luck with the t-shirts. I'm off to China to make movies. Bye.
Around the same time in 2014, one of the world's leading parkour athletes, Kai Willis, dropped a dramatic video calling out Adam on all of his past transgressions. Now, the only version of this that I could obtain somehow has no sound.
Alter, Transition. Er sieht einfach fast so aus wie Matthias Meyer. Einer der besten deutschen Parkour-Athleten, finde ich da gerade in dem Fall. Aber Kai Willis, wer ihn nicht kennt, ist auch oldschool. Mittlerweile macht er, glaube ich, gar keinen Parkour mehr. Absolute Legende.
His past transgressions. Now, the only version of this that I could obtain somehow has no sound. But in the video, he makes 3 clear points. 1, the buying of pro athletes' parkour domain names. 2, stealing designs from other brands.
Ja, Chat sagt gerade hier auf die Frage, was jetzt seine Intention hinter diesem Video ist und der Idee, ein Video über ihn zu machen. Vielleicht hat er gedacht, die Kröte kauft ihm seinen Bullshit ab. Ja, das kann echt sein. Und sagt, boah, was ein geiler Typ, was ein Genie, leider gefällt alles. Ja, und auch ein Kommentar, Frozen Monkey, schon verrückt, was für Sachen passieren können, wenn Kunst bzw. Sportform auf puren Kapitalismus treffen. Ja, ist krass, ne? Zum Glück ist es ja nicht wirklich, hat es ja nicht überhand genommen, da das wirklich so weit gekommen ist, dass man nur Trainer und so werden durfte, wenn man jetzt Parkour, also den Kurs bei ihm da macht. Aber es ist ja wirklich krank, Mann.
Parkour. And 3, Adam's personal website, supermodelgirlfriend.com, where he challenged anyone to help him find a supermodel girlfriend in exchange for a $100,000 cash prize. Now, I wasn't even going to ask him about the website because I could sense it was a bit of a sensitive topic, but Adam himself brought it up.
This is probably the dumbest thing I ever did. If nobody knew about it, I'd be like, that was really cool. But the fact that people know about it makes me really embarrassed. I started a website called supermodelgirlfriend.com. Pretty much what I did on this website is I wrote all these articles about how supermodels were totally crazy about me. And my thinking was that people would see it as a satire, but they didn't, and it's complicated. So anyway.
The website was launched with the tagline, "Join me in my quest to find a supermodel girlfriend and you could win $100,000, which, after being discovered by the parkour community, quickly changed to a satirical website where I write articles detailing my quest to find the perfect supermodel for me. It was full of these strange articles like the 20 best compliments I've received from supermodels, 8 reasons why I'm the greatest snuggler of all time, and 6 reasons why supermodels have the best boobs. So it does seem like it was a strange kind of satire, but it had a very real effect on his brand and the athletes involved, who sat him down to talk about it.
We told him like, hey man, like we don't like, it's just damaging in the image, not only of like your image, but like you also want to be the image of Take Flight. Therefore, you're like really putting us in a hard spot. No one's winning out of this.
The video from Kai blew up like crazy and had the whole parkour community talking shit about Adam, but he didn't seem to mind.
I don't remember having any really negative feeling towards it. And I was also in the mindset of any publicity is good publicity, which isn't true, but I was definitely in that vein of, like I said, I don't care what the parkour world thinks. We're doing hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in sales.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in sales. In the same year that he told David he doesn't have any money?
Even though the core parkour community hasn't bought into what we're doing.
Kein Plan, das kann ja auch gar nicht sein, Alter. Damals haben natürlich schon viele Leute Parkour gemacht, aber halt wirklich nur so eine spezifische Gruppe und nicht die breite Masse, so wie heutzutage. Das kann nicht sein.
We're making waves. And now Kai Willis makes a video. It didn't bother me. What bothered me was then Tim Sheaf made a video.
Adam Dunlap. Nah, bro. He's copyrighted the word parkour on clothing in the whole of the United States of America. So no other company in America can use the word parkour on their clothing, which is absolute BS. It's not a real parkour clothing brand. You claim it and you put on like the world's best parkour trainers, which there's no integrity in that. You know that's subjective for one. Keep it real, guys, that's it, man. Real recognize real. And keep recognizing the real, because Take Flight are not real, they're fake, right? That's it, right, peace.
All of that really hurt me because my heart was to build this company that supported tracers in a profound way, and in a direct way, in a financial way. And then no matter what I did, it seemed like all I got was hate. I thought when I moved to France to work with David, people would say, oh my gosh, this is a guy who has a heart for parkour, because who else would do that? And that was turned against me. And so then here I am years later. It's like I can't do anything right, you know.
So these two videos caused a huge rally of hate towards Adam. People were burning Take Flight t-shirts, and Adam had finally secured himself the title of the most hated man in parkour history. But all the while, he's making thousands of dollars selling clothing to beginners. So there you have it, the story of Adam Dunlap. So, is he a good guy, trying to do the right thing but just going about it the wrong way? Or is he just a businessman with purely selfish motivations? Let me know in the comments. Also, please subscribe because the dopamine it gives me will fuel me on to making more unbelievable content, and video ideas down below because I'm just not that creative. Until next time, cheers.
Krankes Video, Kröte, alter Lachs. Also, ist ja glasklar, ne? Alle absolut rein abonnieren. Die 10.000 sind nicht mehr fern. Ja, liken und natürlich sehr, sehr gerne unten irgendwelche geilen Videoideen reinzimmern. Könnt ihr ihm natürlich auch gerne sagen, dass er mal wieder eine Doku über uns machen soll. Die war nämlich geil. Könnten wir eine Neuauflage von gebrauchen. Und ja, also so wie ich alles verstanden habe in dem Video, ist er einfach jemand, der Parkour völlig missbraucht. Der irgendwie Bock auf Business hat, Big Business, und da halt komplett in die falsche Spur geraten ist und den Sport halt quasi völlig missbraucht, weil Parkour ist wirklich alles andere als, ja, wie sagt man, als ein großer großer Wirtschaftsmarkt oder wie auch immer das heißt. Parkour ist Community, nicht wettkampforientiert, Spaß, gute Laune und, weißt du, so diese Werte. Und halt nicht, ja, du darfst halt nur so und so machen, wenn du hier was kaufst und das kaufst, du musst das kaufen und so weiter und so fort. Das ist sicherlich nicht Parkour und deswegen denke ich, dass Adam Dunlap ein absoluter Keck ist. Und auch so, wie er jetzt nacherzählt, Max gegenüber, ganz schwieriges Ding. Ja, das ist so meine Meinung. Aber war auch ein kompliziertes Video, muss ich sagen. Also muss man schon, das muss man sich vielleicht nochmal angucken, um alles richtig zu checken. Gerade auch als jemand, der nicht englisch muttersprachlich ist. Da waren schon schwierige Vokabularien, sag ich mal, bei. Also, das war's. Tschökes.